Y'all, today we're going to be talking about what is now our earliest peek into what stats in WALLARU are going to look like. This is like day 3 now of Ratbeard blessing us with content. Ratbeard's one of the devs that works for the game. He streams, and I linked the VOD in the description where he discussed specifically this stuff. And this stream seemed to focus on how stats are going to change. And because this upcoming update is also going to come with a jewel audit, meaning literally every single jewel that we've considered normal up to now could be very, very different. Obviously, stats are going to look really different. I wanted to start with some really big announcements that were made there that I don't think were made until now with such clarity. The first point is about shadow pip jewels. Here's what Ratbeard had to say about it.
The shadow jewels are going to jump up to 30. So there's a big jump in shadow jewels.
And this point was clarified later in the chat. Shadow pip jewels are going to be a thing in the game. They give tons and tons of rating. They're going to be triangle sockets. Is also something that maybe was a little bit unclear. Now, shadow pip rating being like literally 30 is a huge difference compared to how shadow rating works right now. Right now, the best chance you have of getting shads is with your gear, not with jewels. This is like a good drop, like an amazing pip. Hematite, I believe this is probably the best way to get shads outside of gear. It only gives 3. It's abysmal. Most gear right now, it gives so much more than that, right? If you like run Burrower, right, you're already running literally what, 7 times as much shad rating as one like random ass jewel give. 30 is a lot. That's like gonna be probably more than any one piece of shad gear like that gives shad rating basically. Now, one thing that I am concerned about is the fact that it is in a triangle socket, which means that schools that are higher accuracy, right? Schools that don't need to use a triangle socket for accuracy to begin with, I feel like those schools are gonna benefit the most, almost disproportionately, with a triangle socket giving shad rating. You already kind of see this with life, right? I'm not even running like a sharp shot pet. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm just running 2 pieces of main gear and 1 very small dazzling opal, and I'm at max accuracy for life. Considering how easy it is already to get shads with huge excesses of other, like stats like pip chance, I'm curious as to how like balance, death, and life are gonna disproportionately get more shad rating, and if that's going to affect the game. Will it actually be a thing? Like, will that unfold the way I'm saying? Maybe not. Maybe there will be so much fluidity in terms of how different schools can access triangle jewels. Maybe it makes more sense for other schools to give up other jewels for triangle jewels and not schools with a ton of accuracy like life, death, and balance. In my opinion, it's all going to come down to options. Like, they're talking about how different themes and rings and wands and decks are all going to give different slots, so every school might have somewhat equal chance to get this extra shad rating if it suits them. But it's crazy. I think a shad jewel is actually going to be a game changer to have in your inventory now in a way that it's never been before. We also got an update on the actual value of health jewels, so this is a clip of that.
Health jewels, roughly 1600 to, let's call it 1600 to 2400.
The range that he was talking about was 1600 to 2400. I think that means that if you fully dedicate yourself to health jewels as a life wizard, you can raise your base HP like by 2400. I think we're gonna see setups that, reach 14,000, 15,000 HP for schools that are health based like life. Will that be broken? Again, I really don't know. The stats are just going to be on another level. This might be the biggest increase of stats I've ever seen world to world simply off of this jewel audit alone. But if you guys didn't watch the video on the jewel audit, I should note this, right? What they're trying to do is, like, every time they make a different template for maybe like a theme or a ring, they're going to change up now how the slots work. So maybe a more defensive ring, like, the Eternal ring, it might give up a tier socket for an extra square socket. And a more offensive set, like the Aeon set, might give up a tier socket for a circle socket, right? And these circle sockets would be used for like pierce, damage, all kinds of things that customize your stats in a way that we haven't seen before. So if you were to run a template that gave a ton of square sockets, which is what health is going to be on, then you could get all the way up to like, I don't know, 15,000 health, I guess, on a life. But you'd obviously be giving up things like triangle sockets, which might actually be important if things like shad rating are so good, and circle jewels, right? You might be giving up offense for all that extra HP. So it might look broken on the surface, but hopefully, depending on the rollout, it's not crazy. Now, the last little tidbit that was brought up on the stream specifically has to do with gear stats, not jewel stats, but I still think it's worth mentioning if you want a good idea as to how WALLARU stats are going to be different. So the numbers that were cited in the stream, again, I encourage y'all to watch if you want the details, is that health is going to increase, outside of all the jewels by anywhere from 200, I guess, which is Storm, to 900, which is life. And resist and pierce are both gonna go up by 2 to 6% depending on the school. Now, the health increase does not seem like, you know, it almost seems negligible, so I don't really think it's worth having a crazy discussion about. But it is interesting to me that the stats are gonna raise resist and like pierce. Like when, let's say you equip all the new WALLARU gear, let's say you craft a bunch of level 170 gear, the resist on resist schools is raising at the same rate as pierce on the pierce schools. Now, the reason why I think that's a little bit annoying from my perspective is I think it's a lot easier to like get insane resist because of the fact that ward and pin exist. So I would have liked to see a world where I assume if fire is one of those 6% schools, yeah, it goes from 57 to 63. Is 63% gonna keep up with resist that literally is about to approach 100 resist if you ward? I'm just not convinced that it will, especially when you do things like throwing on brace, right? I don't know if this is like an overgeneralization of how the game ought to be played, but in my opinion, if you have pure schools like fire and myth, then ward or a resist pin, which adds resist to your opponent's stats, those should be much weaker solutions to your school than to schools that are maybe higher damage, lower pierce, like Death and Storm. I feel like Death Ward and Storm Ward should be much better against Death and Storm than Fire and Myth Ward are good against Fire and Myth. But if you run into PvP, that's pretty much simply not the case. Maybe you have a slight advantage. You don't feel the advantage enough for it to feel like you're on a Pierce school. It would have been nice to see like maybe Pierce moving up like, I don't know, 4 to 8% and resist moving up 3 to 6%. I think that would have been cool just to give Pierce schools a little bit more competition against like things like brace, things like high resist. It does seem like resist just beats out Pierce at the moment. So it is a weird choice in my opinion. That's like the one thing that I'm not excited about. I'm not excited about even more resist centric strategies. And I'm not talking about just PvP. I'm talking about in raids and everything. It seems like resist is getting to a point where they have to create crazy levels of difficulty so that like, you know, mobs stay like, you know, hard to beat. And obviously in PvP, you guys see how crazy resist can be. You can literally play a lot worse. You could have a ward talent and then you could win as a result. So if the stats aren't going to keep up with how good resist with brace is, I hope at least maybe there's changes to our library that reflect it. Maybe there's going to be more Pierce centric strategies for fire and myth. They're the Pierce schools. You don't really get that feeling. But all in all, y'all, it's looking like compared to like Lemuria to Novus, specifically with the stats that are going to increase combined with the jewel audit that they're releasing, it looks like there's going to be way more customizable stats, and the stat caps in terms of what we're used to are going to be way different. And I think the big like story of the day is I think a health and shad chance is going to be a crazy part of how the game is played now in a way that it just wasn't. Hopefully I did a good job summarizing. If you guys want more details, I encourage y'all to check the VOD. I am very excited about the WALLARU update. It seems like it should be releasing very soon. So make sure you turn on noties, y'all. I will be streaming it the day that it drops. As always, let me know what you guys think of the upcoming changes to stats and WALLARU, or at least the early look at them. Obviously, all of this is subject to change, but I'd love to hear y'all's opinion. Drop a like if you enjoyed, leave a sub if you're new, and if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon, and yeah.